Sunday, and thank you for joining our broadcast today. This is a special presentation. We are going to hit the trail today, and I mean that literally. Everybody out there who's listening, we are pounding the tom-toms today, getting a message out, and it's going to be our way of saluting the indigenous Indians all around the world. This is the Global Indian Tribal Community's message to the world. It is a special 5-part series that is broadcasting live on Time for Hemp once a month, the third Sunday of each month, until all 5 parts have been broadcast. And then, of course, they will be found on our website in the archive pages, as well as in Tumblr and SoundCloud and iTunes and iHeartRadio and Spreaker and, of course, YouTube for you to download for free and share with your friends. Today's segment is called The Cannabis Story, in Our Past, in Our Future. And on the program today, we will be having visitors from around the world. Don Land will be joining us today, as well one of his buddies known as Guy Dumas. They have instigated a wonderful approach to bringing industrial hemp into the global tribal community that will help the tribal community around the world lead the way in the industrial hemp revolution. And that is one of the messages that they hope to bring today when they sit down and share their thoughts and conversations with us. I also want to give a big shout out to our sponsors and say thank you to KDK Distributor for being nice enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. If you go to the website of timeforhemp.com, please make it a point to visit our sponsors and let them know that you heard about them here on the big broadcast. The music that opened this broadcast today is called the Welcome Song, and that's what we're trying to do, is to welcome the entire community to the concept of industrial hemp and the wonderful aspects to utilizing this plant as a cash crop and all the great things it can do for our creature comforts without destroying the land. And we also want to welcome you to our website, timeforhemp.com, and encourage you to go there and subscribe to our monthly online magazine called Joint Conversations. And you'll also find a variety of editorial cartoons on the website that you can download for free and also share with your friends. We have about 14 or 19 different hosts on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network that are working diligently to bring to you original content each week about the need to end prohibition. Let me remind you that, like a good joint, Time for Hemp is best when shared with friends. Well, like I said, this is a special presentation. You can tell I'm from Indiana by the way I say special. And what makes this so special is that we will be covering the many aspects of industrial hemp, but we're doing so with a new slant. We're discussing it from the point of view where it is legal to grow now. We'll be covering that here in just a minute. So the things that we talk about as solutions to problems are actually solutions that can be put into place. It's been a while since I last did something of this nature. Those of you who are fans of the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network and or the show itself and have been listening for a number of years are aware that in 2013, the Time for Hemp Broadcasting Network did a thing called the 2013 Global Hemp Summit, and you can find all 5 parts of that on the Time for Hemp website as well and download it for free. That was actually a 6-part segment. We had a keynote speech, and then we had 5 2-hour segments, and we covered the industrial aspect of the plant, the medicinal aspect of the plant, the international laws surrounding the plant, the problems with the arresting and incarceration for being involved with the plant, and solutions to ending the war on drugs. And, of course, it did have a large number of speakers that were part of the presentation from all around the world, I think almost 50 in all. And you can find that on my bio page at timeforhemp.com. Just hover over our current guest and find Casper Leitch and mouse over it, and you will find every segment there that you can download and share for free with your friends. And that was about 2 years ago. We noticed that as we did the presentation week after week, our voice was being heard. All of our guests were making an impact on the communities around us and those who had tuned in and took note of all the information that came from that particular special presentation. And in December of 2014, something rather remarkable happened. And since that time, I've had a handful of people ask me on a regular basis, Casper, when are you going to do the next summit? When are you going to let people know about the remarkable things that this plant can do and let people know what a great boost it can be to the economy and how many jobs can be stimulated from this particular plant? And I always answered back, well, I did that, and you can download it for free. But, you know, there is still a lot more out there to be shared, and there has been an awful lot that has happened on the political front, not just here in America, but all around the world pertaining to this plant. The United Nations is now taking a good look at ending prohibition on all drugs, but as well as especially marijuana, i.e. industrial hemp. Many countries are using industrial hemp already as part of their economic base, and so we thought, well, maybe we should revisit the topic. And as I said, in December of 2014, something really remarkable happened, and we woke up on the 15th to news reports from all around the world discussing this news event out of Washington, D.C. From the AP Newswire, Native American tribes can make their own marijuana laws. The U.S. Justice Department said Thursday Indian tribes can grow and sell marijuana on their lands as long as they follow the same federal conditions laid out for the states that have legalized the drug. Oregon U.S. Attorney Amanda Marshall said Thursday the announcement addresses questions raised by tribes about how legalization of pot in states like Oregon, Washington, and Colorado would apply to Indian lands. Only 3 tribes have expressed interest in growing and selling marijuana, said Marshall, who co-chaired a group that developed the policy. One is in California, one is in Washington State, and the other one is in the Midwest. Marshall warned the announcement was not a green light to tribal authorities and that marijuana is still illegal under federal law. The U.S. government's prosecution priorities involve pot-related gang activity, violence, sales to kids, and trafficking continue. Problems could arise for tribes with lands in states that still outlaw marijuana due to the likelihood that marijuana could be transported or sold outside tribal boundaries. Seattle attorney Anthony Broadman, whose firm represents tribal governments throughout the West, said the announcement represents a potential for an enormous economic development tool here. If tribes can balance all the potential social issues, it could be a really huge opportunity.
It's Sunday, December 14th, 2014. This is Matt Lamb, your host, and welcome to the Marijuana Minute. In a sweeping spending bill that passed the Senate on Saturday night, the federal government sends some mixed messages on medicinal marijuana, but most would agree it's a big win for weed. The Huffington Post is reporting that the omnibus legislation to fund the federal government also includes an amendment that prohibits the Department of Justice from using funds to go after state legal medicinal cannabis programs. The Medical Marijuana Protections Amendment was proposed in May by Democratic Representative Sam Farr from California and protects marijuana businesses in 23 states where medicinal marijuana is legal and 11 more states where CBD oil extracts are now legal. Representative Farr was very optimistic, stating that the federal government will finally respect the decisions of medicinal marijuana states. The same legislation also holds a measure, however, blocking the newly passed marijuana law approved by over 70% of the voters in the District of Columbia, where Congress has the power to override local laws. Although some members of Congress believe loopholes may allow the measure to proceed, the message is clear. Congress does not want legal marijuana at its own doorstep. This has been the Marijuana Minute. Until next time, stay high.
Hello and welcome to FourCornersTV.com. I'm Laura Schweizer, and this is the local roundup. Native American reservations have been a haven for gamblers, but now these sovereign nations might have hit the jackpot. The Justice Department decided they'll no longer prosecute federal laws regulating the growing or selling of marijuana on reservations. Different than gambling laws, it isn't state-dependent, meaning that tribal governments make the dope decisions, whether the state they're located in has legalized pot or not. Out of the 326 federally recognized reservations, only 3 have stated their interest in legalization. But how they tax it is a different story.
In 1942, after hundreds of years of persecution and abuse, the U.S. government legally defined the Federal Indian Trust Responsibility. It was a pivotal time in history when the U.S. government, building upon previous court rulings, officially took moral responsibility for the plight of Native Americans. Since then, there have been many other acts intended to improve conditions for indigenous populations. The question is, what has the U.S. done, and is it working? For the most part, Native Americans have access to free medical care. There are also scholarships and loans specifically for them and unique financial opportunities. In the 1980s, the Supreme Court ruled that in states where some form of gambling is legal, be it something minimal like bingo or horse racing, tribes in those states can operate casino-like halls and gaming activities on their reservations. According to the National Indian Gaming Commission, casinos now gross about $28 billion annually and have stimulated job creation and population growth. The U.S. Justice Department is also now allowing some tribes to grow and sell marijuana. These policies are intended to help combat poverty and other socioeconomic problems. But as of yet, there is little proof that they're working. In 2012, those who identified exclusively as Native American or Alaska Native had a poverty rate of almost 30%, and Native American and Alaska Natives are more at risk for substance abuse, gang involvement, mental health issues, child victimization, and suicide. Before Obamacare, many free clinics for Native Americans did not provide a full array of services, and 30% of Native Americans remained uninsured. Casinos also have a spotty record. According to the Native American Rights Fund, gaming on Indian reservations has not appreciably lowered the high levels of poverty on Indian lands nationwide. Some even argue that casinos have created a false perception that Native American communities are getting rich, which can be detrimental to fundraising efforts for much-needed relief services and community development projects. Tribal leaders are also hesitant about the new policies surrounding the growth and sale of marijuana. According to one representative, Indian tribes have been decimated by drug use. Tribal regulations of pot are going to have to dovetail with tribal values, making sure marijuana isn't a scourge like alcohol or tobacco. If you'd like to learn more about the plight of Native American tribes or indigenous people around the world, check out this video on D News. Thank you for watching Test Tube Daily. New videos 6 days a week. Please subscribe.
This is Colin O'Keefe here with an in-person episode of LXBN TV. The Department of Justice announced earlier this week that would allow Native American tribes to establish their own rules and regulations around the legality of marijuana use. Joining me now to explain exactly what they did and what that could mean going forward is attorney Lael Echohawk. She's with Garvey Schubert Bayer. We are here in their offices, and she is author on their blog as well, and that is Smoke Signals. Lael, first off, let's start kind of with the basics. What exactly has the federal government done here? What have they laid out?
Basically, the federal government did what they've done for states, and they're sort of letting states decide whether or not they want to legalize marijuana within their state. There's a number of requirements, but I think most importantly, the memo that was released last Thursday, it's actually written in October, but that was released last Thursday, it says two things. Number one, it says that the federal government can still enforce federal marijuana laws. And number two, that while tribes can begin thinking about whether or not they want to legalize, that consultation has to occur with the individual districts. And, that's sort of one of the problems that I see going forward, because this consultation that's going to happen has to be done on a district-by-district basis.
Absolutely. And then that's a nice segue there. As you mentioned, one of the negatives, many people have seen this news come down. They say this is going to be very big. This could be huge. What are your thoughts on how big this could be? And then with that, what are some of the positives? But then, as you mentioned, what are the negatives that could come with this as well?
Yeah. So I agree that this actually could be huge if tribes decide to enter into this industry. There's a lot of opportunity. Again, you have to follow through with the requirements of robust regulatory scheme. I think first and foremost, tribes need to sit down and internally decide whether or not, based on the issues that they've dealt with, social issues. I mean, some of these large land-based tribes have actually, in the past couple of years, we've lobbied Congress for the passage of the Tribal Law and Order Act, the Violence Against Women Act, because we've seen drug dealers come out into Indian country and grow and sell, and then come back because there was sort of this safe haven that we've tried to address those things, and we certainly have through these various pieces of legislation. But those issues we need to internally work through, and then we need to figure out how that enforcement's going to look. There are counties, there are towns, there are states, the Department of Justice. There are all these agencies, law enforcement agencies that tribes are going to need to talk to and figure out some sort of comprehensive enforcement scheme that's going to be much more sophisticated, I think, than what we have currently. So once you jump through that hurdle, then tribes are going to need to take a look at their own internal codes and ordinances, regulations, and decide how you're going to make that. If you decide that you want to enter into the industry, then how are those codes and regulations and policies all going to intersect? And if not, then tribes need to be aggressive about passing ordinances and laws that say that the tribe is not going to legalize marijuana, because otherwise you end up in a situation here, for example, in Washington State, where you've got tribes that, like the Yakama Nation, which has been in the news, that say absolutely not, no marijuana on their land. But then, you cross the street and you can be in Washington State where it is legal. And so, tribes are going to have to be very clear about the position that they take. But there is opportunity in terms of production, that growing, processing, actually turning into medicinal or recreational marijuana products, and then retailing, whether or not tribes want to retail. There is an opportunity, for example, here in Washington State, where a tribe that allows smoking in the casino could conceivably allow an area to consume marijuana products, which in Washington State it's not legal to consume marijuana products publicly. So there's sort of that opportunity. There is opportunity, but the nuances are very, very complicated. We're working on them here at Garvey Schubert Bear. We're going to have a webinar in January where we sort of go through in much more detail than our little conversation here. So I'm going to be posting about that on the blog probably next week, and see how it goes.
Cool. We'll have to keep an eye out for it. Like you mentioned, it presents an abundance of opportunity, but all sorts of gray areas can pop up. I saw on a state level, one state is suing another state that it borders because it's having to step up its law enforcement activity. So there's opportunity, but there's a lot of gray areas as well. Once again, that was Lael Echohawk. If you want to see more of her insight, it is on her blog, Smoke Signals, and of course she is with Garvey Schubert Bear, where we are today. Thanks for talking with me today.
Yeah, thanks, Colin.
I think God smokes weed. And he was high when he made me. I can feel it in my DNA. I think God smokes weed. And he was high when he made me. And I think he gave up halfway. Complete as I understand. God was making a mess of the man he planned. In the face of defeat, he smoked a helping hand and said, I'll just put him in a reggae band. I feel it in the beat when I'm on the stand. I feel it in my feet when I'm on the sand. I see it in the sunsets that might expand into your mind so you understand. I think God smokes weed and he was high. body. They said that God's infallible consistently, except for the one time you dropped that seed. I hear that God's in you and me and all we see, assuming all the actions of my own body. If that's the way it is, then you must agree. Every time we rock the ganj, so does he. I think God smokes weed, and he was high when he made me. I can feel it in my DNA. I think God smokes weed, and he was high when he made me. And I think he gave up halfway.
Welcome back to the big broadcast, everyone. Happy Sunday. Thank you for tuning in to this special presentation, our webinar about the growth of the industrial hemp products and all the wonderful jobs it's going to create for all the indigenous Indians all around the world. This is going to be a 5-part presentation. Please share us with your friends the third Sunday of each month until each segment has been presented, and then, of course, they will be archived and easy to locate on the timeforhemp.com website, where you can download them for free and share them with your friends. We are found on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and, of course, at timeforhemp.com. You can also go to the Google app store and find us there and download us into your smartphones, and always stay on top of what's going on in the marijuana industrial hemp movement. Joining me on the program today are two hard-working activists. We have a gentleman from Taiwan, and we've got one from Canada. We have Don Land here from Taiwan. Don, I want to say thank you very much for being part of our webinar.
Good morning from the Kingdom of Thailand, everybody.
And also joining us is Guy Dumas, and I want to say thank you, Guy, for being here today. And isn't your nation the Northern Cree?
Okay, not necessarily. However, I come from that territory. When I get an opportunity to explain where I come from, I'll jump in at that time, but that's close to it.
Okay. But aren't you part of an organization that has a lot of other Indian tribes as part of that organization as well?
Okay, no, actually, I come from, if I could say my name, first of all, my name is not Guy Dumas. That's an imposed name by the Canadian government or the federal government. And when they were handing out names, that just happened to be the one that I got. And my real name is Nimheto Penese. And I come from the Wapascasani tribe. And the Wapascasani tribe is located in what we call Fiction, Manitoba, northern Manitoba, where where again the government have called the Cree territory what we would call Ideno. So there's as you know, with the English language, sometimes it doesn't really describe what the real story is when it comes to tribal peoples throughout Turtle Island here.
Okay, sounds like you've got an awful lot there to share with our audience, and we'll make it a point to get back to you here in just a minute. But let's kick off with Don and see what Don's up to. Now, Don, what are you doing with industrial hemp there in Thailand?
Well, what happened was about 15 years ago, the Kingdom of Thailand started a hemp project under the Queen's Circuit Botanical Garden to study the efficacy of cannabis, not only medicinally, but also for commercial use, in relation to the constitutional rights that the Hmong tribe here in Thailand has due to its history with cannabis. And what they did is they did a 10-year project to scientifically quantify the value-added verticals of what cannabis can represent to the tribe for economic purposes. And when the project ended, it went into the next phase of study, taking the academic results of that study, and my task has been to quantify it in the economic world. So we created Thai Cannabis Corporation to take the studies and try to find the most value-added aspects of the plant that would benefit the Hmong nations and the tribes.
Okay, so that's been going on for 15 years.
Yes.
Well, how long have you been involved with it?
I got involved almost as soon as I arrived here in Thailand, and got directly involved with the Queen Sirk Botanical Garden, with the directorship, and I gave them some input as a consultant and advisor, taking the project from an academic study to a commercialization study. And since then, we've gone into a second phase of projects where here in the next 2 weeks, I go back to Queen Sirk Botanical Garden and to the Highland Research and Development Institute to present our final plans on how to integrate cannabis into the economy for the Hmong tribes. The thing that makes my situation a little bit different is that I do not involve myself in domestic issues or domestic causes for cannabis use for the average population of the Kingdom of Thailand or the government of Thailand. What we do is we look at the fact that trying to do something commercialization for a tribe, if the money is only coming from a local area, then all you're doing is circulating money within that region, and it's not actually causing an increase in economic benefit. So what we did is we took the tribal perspective and we reached out to other tribes through Turtle Island and with Guy to create an international causality to import-export that would cause an increase in benefit economically.
Now, the tribes in North America are considered sovereign nations and are able to set their own rules, regulations, and police their own property. And I know that makes it a whole different ball game when it comes to dealing with the rest of the country who is under the federal jurisdiction of the United States government. How are you working with the North American community?
The thing is that yes, while our tribes do have different rights, we still have to be in compliance with the United Nations. Mm-hmm. And we've been working to achieve parity with the United Nations UNDRIP Treaty. That is the Indigenous Rights Treaty with the United Nations. I got involved because I come from the Oregon coast, and I'm a half-breed. I am part of a native tribe on the Oregon coast. And back in the 70s, we were in defiance of prohibition and trying to eradicate poverty within our own tribe. So we realized that growing cannabis illegally was something that would help alleviate poverty for our elderly and within our nations. And coming to Thailand was quite a surprise to me to find that they were already working on trying to end prohibition when everybody in the world is in the belief that Thailand is a very hard country in regards to cannabis. So when I got involved with this, it's because I am tribal myself, and it was just a natural fit.
Well, before we get any further into this great conversation, I think it would be very good for our audience to have a chance to also hear a little bit more from Guy and say hello to him. Good morning, Guy. Happy Sunday.
Hey, good morning. It's a pleasure to be on this program today.
I know one of the reasons why you were excited about being part of this webinar is that you wanted to share with people how it was that you discovered other aspects of the plant besides the fact that you could just smoke it, right?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, I was just, as I mentioned, I was just totally ignorant about cannabis not too long ago. In fact, back in my younger days, in my late teens, early 20s, I did smoke a lot of cannabis and things like that. But after a certain point of living this lifestyle, what I call what I call the traditional lifestyle. I totally gave it up because it's not part of what our cultural practices are. And so I've stayed away from it for many years until every time I would hear someone talk about cannabis, or I would smell it on people's clothes or on their breath or hair, I'd say, yeah, they're smoking up, and things like that, and all these different ideas about people that use cannabis and things like that. All the misinformation and misinformation that's been fed to me through the media, through newspaper, and through other people that are just as ignorant, if not more ignorant than I was. And yeah, I was just totally like out there somewhere, not really knowing anything about cannabis and totally ignorant about its many uses and advantages and all of that. So, and I suddenly got a realization or an awakening, I should say, towards cannabis when it really hit home to me. And of course, this is a personal story that I'm sharing for the first time on air. And it really hit home to me when my brother passed away in October. He had 4-stage cancer, and in his last few months, he was in extreme pain, and it just bothered me that I was observing all his pain that he was going through. And almost every hour, he was taking these synthetic painkillers that were probably harming him more than helping him. But nevertheless, it was dulling his pain enough so that he could carry on a normal basis. And but he would tell me that he was in extreme pain, but he didn't want to show it. His body was used to it, his mind was used to it. And so one day I said, hey, you know what? I've been talking to different people about medical cannabis. Would you mind trying that? Because, I mean, it ain't going to hurt you if you try it. And, of course, he's of the same mind as I was in our traditional ways. It's not part of our culture here. It is part of the Western indigenous peoples' cultures there, but not part of the central indigenous peoples here. We weren't gifted with that medicine, and so part of our teachings is not to use medicines that have not been gifted to us in our traditional ways. So he was very adamant and very strong on that as well. And so as time went on, a couple of weeks go by, and I could see that he was just deteriorating even further and further. And again I introduced it to him, and of course by this time I'm up to speed as much as I could about cannabis and its uses and stuff like that. And so I talked to him about it a little bit more, and I said, there's a lot of people out there that use cannabis to manage their pain. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's probably better for you than these crap synthetic drugs that you're taking. And in fact, if it were up to me, I'd probably prescribe this cannabis to you rather than all these 38, 42 pills that you're taking a day. And I can just imagine what it's doing to your intestines and your stomach and everything else. And so he says this was about 3 weeks prior to him moving on to the spirit world. He says, so he agreed. Okay, he said, okay, I'll give it a try. And he was very reluctant, but yet he said, okay, I'll give it a try. And so I made some phone calls to some people that I knew that were in the industry, specifically in the Washington State area there. And so I made a few phone calls, and I said, what do I need to get this up here? And by the time I was going through all the loopholes to get that done, my brother had already passed away. And so to me, as I think about that story, I know that my brother is not an isolated case. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people that experience so much pain in their life that if this other natural drug or medicine, I should say, this natural medicine would help them cope with daily life with less pain, I would support that in a heartbeat. And I know that a few of my relatives, even right now, I can think of 3 or 4 of them that are in extreme pain right now, and they know that I'm in this industry, but yet I know that they're shy to ask me about its uses and about its benefits, and I know that at some point I'm going to have to ask them if they entertain the idea of using cannabis to manage their pain. But yes, I was very ignorant of the fact about cannabis, both the medical marijuana as well as the hemp, and I knew very little about it. In fact, the only thing that I knew about hemp was I heard years ago that you could make shirts out of it, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around how you could make a shirt out of hemp. So I was just like totally ignorant, man. And so that's my story about being totally ignorant up to a couple of years ago. And of course, I've been educating myself as quickly and as fast as I can, because it's such a vital industry for so many things that are going on right now. And I'm happy to be involved in the industry, even though I have told people that I don't pass any judgment against anyone that uses any kind of cannabis whatsoever. And in fact, jokingly, I have even said that if I walk into a building and there's a lot of smoke going on, I don't know how long I'll be going to hold my breath, but I'm sure by the time I go to the other side of the room there, I'll probably be a little bit, I'll have a little buzz going. But, because you can't stop breathing, right? You got to keep breathing.
Yeah, and my perspective on this is I've spent most of my adult life involved with cannabis in one degree or another, and from Oregon Country Fair to the barter fairs to the Hemp Fest to all that. And 30 years ago, we were ostracized, completely socially excluded because of our relationship to cannabis. And I developed an attitude that I call myself a green man. What I mean by that is that the social ostracization that we've experienced is almost as if it's racism. And when you look at it from that perspective of racism, you start to understand that we have done something to ourselves where we have put ourselves in a place of victimization because of prohibition that is not healthy for us. We need to get away from this idea of victimization and ostracization from social inclusion and redevelop ourselves that we are not victims. We are not a second-class citizen or some kind of aberration, that we do deserve to have recreational use by showing that we are inclusive into the economy, into the society, and into uplifting our countries and our peoples, rather than being like I was when I was in my 20s, a traveling hippie that went around and just had fun. I think that these are some of the things that need to be addressed if we're going to talk about recreational use, is social responsibility.
Well, speaking of responsibility, I have responsibilities to this broadcasting network, and the only way I can take care of those responsibilities is if I find a way to pay the bills, and we do that by taking commercial breaks on all of our programming here on the big network. Do make it a point to go to the timeforhemp.com website and let our sponsors know that you heard about them here at timeforhemp.com. Please check out the Google Plus store and get yourself an app. Find an app at SoundCloud or Tumblr and iHeartRadio. We are the only 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, all cannabis, all the time broadcasting network on iHeartRadio. And like a good joint, we are best when shared with friends.
every time you're in my life. Wake up in the morning, I like it so. Every day, every time you're in my life. Wake up in the morning, I like it so. Every day, every time you're in my life. Some people like your soul, or some people like it is. You will be enjoying. Don't care about the older sweet soul. Sweet, sweet soul. Weed in my soul. Sweet soul. Sweet, sweet soul. Weed in my soul. Sweet soul. Sweet, sweet soul. Weed in my soul. Sweet soul. Sweet, sweet soul. Weed in my soul. Yeah.
I do want to make it a point to thank one of our sponsors, KDK Distributors, for being nice enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. And I want to remind people out there that if you go to the homepage of timeforhemp.com, you will find a little video about a free vaporizer that Kelly is giving away to the medical marijuana community. And on this particular special webinar series, Kelly asked if he could be part of what we're doing, at least long enough to make our audience aware that if they need a free medical vaporizer, that Kelly and his team are more than happy to make that happen. Isn't that right, Kelly?
You bet. Guy, I don't know, you were talking about that you've quit smoking cigarettes, which is awesome, 15 years ago. And cannabis, I guess you're not smoking cannabis, but if you've ever tried the alternative vaporization, it's extremely, very, very different than smoking. When you smoke, you're combusting. When you're vaporizing, you've eliminated combustion. So when you eliminate the combustion, you eliminate the well over 20 carcinogens that are created by just the combustion alone. So from a health perspective, it's extremely healthier than burning, whether it be in your pipe, in your bong, or rolling it in a joint. When you vaporize, it's much healthier way to consume cannabis. So what I've done, and I started my business 15 years ago with a quality vaporizer, and the first thing I thought was it would be beneficial to the medical community, to people who were consuming cannabis as medicine or for whatever their ailment may be. And a lot of these people were elderly, and a lot of them had never smoked in their entire lives. So just the idea alone of smoking cannabis was not really very appealing to them. So I knew that a quality vaporizer was an awesome device for the medical community. So I went there first. And you know what? I found out that I was right, that a lot of people in the medical community could really benefit with vaporization. What I also found out when I was there is that a lot of these people are on assisted income, on a pension, on a disability pension, on some welfare, whatever the case may be. They simply could never, ever afford a vaporizer. As a matter of fact, for a lot of them, if you know some people, Guy, I don't know how they afford to pay rent and buy food, let alone cannabis as medicine, and then think about getting a quality vaporizer is just definitely not in the equation. So I made it a point that once we became successful in the industry, or if we became successful, that we would give back, and that's where we would give back. So for several years now, we here at KDK have teamed up with the guys at Herbal Air, and we give away a Herbal Air 2.2 once every month to a medical patient, and they can be anywhere in the world. We have shipped them quite some odd locations. So wherever you are, you may be listening. If you're a medical patient and you really could use a vaporizer, it's really, really simple. All you have to do is send me an email to Kelly, Kelly, at kdkwholesale.ca. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and, of course, an address where we can send a free vaporizer to you if you're lucky enough to be drawn from the hat of eligible entrants. And all we ask is that you simply be a medical patient. In other words, you use cannabis as a medicine, and you could never afford a quality vaporizer. Those are the only two requirements. And I'm sure you know some people, Guy, as well as I know I do, and I know Casper does, and certainly anybody who is listening right now, either you're a patient yourself or certainly you know somebody that could benefit from a free vaporizer. So certainly let them know about the program, because I know we love to hear from you guys, and we especially love to hear about the stories we get back from some of the medical patients, because there's another benefit that a lot of people are not aware. Because it's more efficient than combustion, and you recover more of the active ingredient, you actually need to use less cannabis to attain the same thing. So it's not only healthier for the medical patient, it's also easier on the pocketbook. So it's a huge, huge advantage to them. So hopefully we hear from some of you in the near future, because we have a lot of fun giving away free vaporizers.
And on behalf of the medical marijuana movement, Kelly, thank you so much for doing that. That is such a gracious offer that you and your team do. And we also want to let people know that the winners are listed. The name of the person drawn is listed in joint conversations each month. So make it a point to get a copy and tune in and let your friends know about this wonderful act of love.
Thank you, Kelly. Certainly appreciate the story that you just told there. And yes, I know of many, many, many people that could use this vaporizer to replace the existing pharmaceuticals that they use. And that's just, that just boils my blood, man. I mean, all this stuff that we've been fed about this information, about what's good for us and what we need and what will help us and all of that. I mean, it's just kind of okay. So before I go too deep down that rabbit hole, I just wanted to mention something about the tribe that I represent. The tribe that I represent is called Wapascasine, and it's located in northern Manitoba Fiction, and it's in a place called, it's in the Praying River, High Rock, Granville Lake area, Fiction, and that's where the Wapascasine tribe comes from, and that's where I come from. And, and most of the people up there are very traditional in their own ways, and yet at the same time have to adapt to the many changes that our world offers. And there's people like myself that have wandered around Mother Earth on Turtle Island here, experiencing the many different cultures and many different ways of life itself. And the Wapascasine tribe is probably one of the more advanced tribes on Turtle Island, is willing to look at different options, different ideas, to get the tribal members out of the box, as we say, because there's two laws of the land: law of the land 1, law of the land 2. Within the law of the land 1 is where it talks about Indians or Indios, and law of the land 2 talks about persons or domestic law. And most of the things that happen within Canada as a corporation is within the law of the land too, which is domestic. And if we go across the invisible line to the United States, which is another corporation itself, it still operates within the law of the land too, and still within the corporations. And so, and I'm leading up to the idea that we've been looking at all the things that are happening at the United Nations level regarding cannabis, and it's labeled in many different ways. And the Wapisicossene tribe, as I mentioned, is a lot more advanced and progressive in terms of engaging the world itself. We have a relationship with the Hmong tribe in Thailand, and we're establishing other relationship with other tribes in Australia, New Zealand, as well as out in Africa. And we also have a good relationship with our brothers down in the United States fiction. There's a lot of tribal communities there that are not part of the corporate tribal system, not the way that they're encased within the Indian Reorganization Act in the United States fiction, or the Indian Act here in Canada fiction. And so as a Wapisicossene tribe, we certainly like the idea that that we can determine who we would like to engage in different trade and commerce, who we'd like to associate with. We don't need to ask for approval or a rubber stamp or an okay or these are the rules you need to follow. We use our common sense. We know what's right. We don't need to be told by the government what's right and what's wrong. We can do that perfectly fine. We did that for thousands of years prior to the governments arriving here on Turtle Island, prior to any corporate type of culture arriving here on Turtle Island. We're doing perfectly fine. And so we don't need governments, corporate governments, telling us that this is the rules, these are the legislations, these are the laws that you need to abide by. Sure, we're going to respect them. Sure, we recognize them because we know that there's other cultures that live on Turtle Island that need those rules and regulations and those things that they have to follow. So we respect them. We're not totally discounting them. We know that they have their place. But when it comes to the indigenous peoples like the Wapisicossene tribe, we have our own ways of doing things, and we don't need anyone to interfere in our way of life any longer. It's been over a couple of 100 years now, and aren't things supposed to be good? Aren't things supposed to be well in Indian country? Take a look at Indian country, at the poverty rate, at the unemployment, at the poverty, at the violence, at the sickness, and all that crap that happens. And they're trying to tell us that Canada is the most happiest place in the world. In fact, there was a study released not too long ago that Canada was placed as the 5th country in the world that's the happiest place in the world. To me, that's just a bunch of bleep, bleep, bleep.
Well,
so I totally disagree with that study.
Well, this is a good spot for us to take a commercial break at, and then we're going to pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Welcome back to part one of the Time for Hemp webinar that is paying salute to the global indigenous Indians that are going to be hopefully leading the world in the new industrial hemp revolution. And also make it a point to share this with your friends. This will be happening the third Sunday of each month, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Make it a point to share it with your friends. And if you don't have a chance to listen to the live broadcast, you can always find the archives at timeforhemp.com. These will be posted for sure in a couple of spots, one of which, the Casper Leitch bio page. Just go to timeforhemp.com, and you can click on Current Host, the navigational button, and I am one of the current hosts. I do a program every Monday through Friday called Time for Hemp. And we would be grateful if you let everybody know about that, as well as all the other programming that's found here on the network. People like Judge James Gray does a show on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. And Al Graham's got a show that comes out of Canada every Monday. We've got a Grow program with Wolf Siegel every Wednesday. Andrea Herman does a wonderful show about industrial hemp called iHeartRadio. And you can always make it a point to find some good music to party with if you've got friends visiting about every other hour or so on the live broadcast stream. We play lots of good music that is focused on how wonderful marijuana, i.e. cannabis, i.e. industrial hemp is. Big salute to all of our sponsors. Please go to the timeforhemp.com website. Let them know that you found them there and that you are grateful that they are a sponsor of this programming so that the message can get out all around the world how important it is to end prohibition. Well, Don, I must say, it makes for an interesting observation that the indigenous Indian tribes could end up being the leaders in the industrial hemp world. I know that you've got an agreement with North American tribes as well. What types of materials and products are you hoping to bring to market?
Well, we're looking at many different things, mostly food and energy and other value-added verticals to cannabis. But it's not only cannabis that we are working on. Cannabis is the doorway or the gateway to a much broader spectrum of trade, like coffee and other goods and services that Thailand offers through its education system and our ability to have year-round produce and fruit to support the North American tribes. And same thing with the North American tribes to supply Thailand with different goods and services that are wanted and desired down here as well.
How does hemp open the door to other commodities for the Indian nations?
Well, how it helps to open the door is that Canada, the government of Canada and the government of the United States has trade sanctions and barriers in place against countries because of prohibition. And once we lift this prohibition of this plant, in exchange of all the different verticals that we're looking at for food, cosmetics, energy, seed trade, and all these other things, all the other things that we're having difficulties in supplying the tribes with becomes less of a difficulty for us. So by the time we actually are able to overcome the cannabis trade sanctions by being in compliance with the United Nations UNDRIP treaty, it's going to open up the door to a lot more trade with all the North American tribes on a two-way street.
I've had the chance to see your neck of the woods on YouTube and news reports, and your scenery is beautiful. There's a lot of plants down there. You've got a fantastic environment to grow beautiful crops. And I understand that you've got a large piece of land, too, that you work as a farm and have farm animals and intend to grow crops and are growing crops.
Yes, we've developed a permaculture farm here, according to King Bhumipol's self-sustainable plan and new theory. And what I've done is I've taken King Bhumipol's new theory of self-sustainability and integrated Queen Circuit's plan from the Hemp project as the energy part of the plan. And by integrating the two plans together, we not only have permaculture self-sustainability, but we actually go beyond that and into being a benefit.
Okay, now you've got a big benefit by having a tropical environment where you have one season, basically 12 months out of the year, unlike other parts of the world, like in North America, where we have all 4 seasons throughout the year. And that benefit plays into your hands pretty nicely, doesn't it?
Well, in polyculture farming, our photo period here is year-round. We have a stable photo period of 12/12, which means that for medical use, we have to actually do supplemental lighting. However, for field use, or what we consider to be field cannabis, we don't concern to what prohibitionists call hemp. We've gotten away from that and have gone with land-raised strains that we identify as field cannabis. Through the project, we've learned that we can actually have 4 crops a year in a rotating basis on the same land. But because we want to have one fallow period, we've decided on only having 3 crops in rotation per year. So we can outproduce North America or anywhere north of 30 degrees north latitude, actually 20 degrees north latitude, 3-1.
Now, I understand there are still a lot of hurdles to overcome, but once you get this into production, where you're going from seed to plant to product, you're going to have raw material and you're going to be producing industrial materials as well. How do you plan on distribution of the industrial hemp material and products that will be generated?
Well, that's something that's we're in negotiation phase right now. We're addressing the issue of being in compliance with the United Nations UNDRIP Treaty, and once we've gotten that compliance, then we'll be looking at supplying the tribes with everything from viable seed to food seed to all the vertical added benefits that we can put together. The thing that we are looking at in support of helping the tribes in North America is that because of the Queen Circuit Botanical Garden study, we've generated several different universities here who have studied cannabis sciences. We have doctorates, we have master's degrees, and we have universities and institutes in support, which means that we can invite Guy and other gentlemen like himself from other tribes down here for formal education to produce degrees and to set up factories and to have support on an industrial scale.
Do you have any specific products in mind that you think would be great for taking to market as you open up this new industry? There's, of course, the clothing market and the food market, the cosmetic market, and now the housing market, where you can have hempcrete and use it for making thick walls and making a strong roof. So there's a variety of avenues to explore. Have you decided any?
Yeah, building materials is something that we're looking at for sure. We're looking at capturing some of the United Nations contracts for disaster relief in that regard. As far as cloth and things like that, we're not interested in competition with India and China. That would be not very beneficial at this point. But we are looking at collateral relationships with other organizations and companies like Hemp Flax, as an example, to put in factories for composites and other polymers and oils, and really actually getting a very good market share in a lot of different aspects. Our primary thing over here is that I have to be a respondent. So if Guy puts in an order for, let's say, oil for cosmetic use, then that order is something I can respond to. so that we are creating benefit for the Hmong tribes here. And that's the guiding principle that I have, is that my representation of the Hmong here, the tribes here, they have to receive some form of benefit. So that's where we're looking at.
Oh, okay. Somehow I was under the impression that you guys were going to be focusing on the cosmetic industry. Maybe it was Guy who said that to me. Is that correct, Guy?
Well, yes, that's one of the things that we're doing, plus a whole bunch of other verticals as well. And first of all, I'd like to say thanks for Don for setting the stage there, and all the things that he had mentioned, the background information to this dialogue that we've been having about what his challenge or / opportunity is in Thailand, and what we face here in what's considered to be North America or Turtle Island. And so as we began to talk about this, one of the things that Don did mention was the poverty situation that most of the First Nation, Aboriginal, Native American communities face throughout Turtle Island. And it's no secret that still a lot of the communities, a lot of the tribal communities live in third world type conditions. And here it is in 2015, when we have such rich countries that are benefiting from the resources of Mother Earth here. And the people, the poorest of poorest are the tribal peoples throughout Turtle Island here, as well as what we have come to refer to as Elephant Island. Elephant Island is where Don Land is located. So when he talks about the Hmong tribe actually resides on what we refer to as Elephant Island. And there's a long teaching on the reason why it's called Elephant Island over there, and the reason why it's called Turtle Island over here. Nevertheless, just to stay focused on what Don is talking about here with his challenge / opportunity that he has with the Highland Regional Development Institute, as well as the Queen Circuit Botanic Garden project there, and also with the Hmong tribe there, and all the things that he's doing there. And I've had an opportunity to engage Don many hours talking about different things about the challenges over there and about the challenges over here. And we started talking about the idea of establishing some kind of international trade and commerce. And I know that there's a lot of people that are unaware that the tribal peoples here operate on two sets of what's called land of the laws. Land of the laws, there's basically two types. There's one that's specifically addressed to the persons, and one that's specifically addressed to the tribal peoples. And when I talk about the original treaties that were established, and these are the teachings that I get from my customary chief, who's located in our Wapascusini tribe up in northern Manitoba, Sick, and he would be the one that would describe what these treaties are that affect the tribal peoples here on Turtle Island. And so these treaties were established pre-Confederation, pre-United States Corporation, pre-Canada Corporation, and pre any kind of corporate structure here on Turtle Island. And so these treaties that were established, they set the stage for tribal peoples to be able to engage other tribal peoples from anywhere in the world, anywhere on Mother Earth, because that was an inherent right that was given to the tribal peoples, and it's something that the tribal peoples never gave away or never relinquished to the governments or to the corporate slaveries or the people that work in corporations. And so, and also prior to that, there was something else called the Jay Treaty, 1794, 1793, and so that's pre-Canada as well. It's also pre-United Pre-Indian Act, Pre-Indian Reorganization Act, and all of these things that are in the last 100 years or so. So I'm referencing things that were established by the tribal peoples here, with the idea of engaging tribal peoples from anywhere in the world. And so, if we wanted to do international commerce and trade as a tribal people, we have that opportunity to do that through the Jay Treaty. But working with the existing systems right now, this is where things may get a little bit challenging, because, as I said earlier, the existing systems operate on the law of the land 2. Not on the law of the land 1. And so when we operate with the law of the land 2, this is where we have to follow the things that have to do with the UNDRIP treaty and all the things that do with international trade and commerce between different countries and that type of thing. However, as tribal peoples, as I said, we have an opportunity to not have to be able to work under that system if we choose not to. However, we want to make sure that that we have a good working relationship with other tribal peoples from throughout the world. If it means working what's referred to as in the box, we can figure that out. It's very easy to understand how to work in the box. There's nothing complicated about it, and it's just a matter of identifying the source of the rules and regulations, and then filling out the required paperwork and paying the currency that's attached to that paperwork. In the original law of the land between the tribal peoples, it's not about money. It's not about rules and regulations. It's not about who controls who and who controls what. There's a different kind of mentality. There's a different kind of thinking that goes with how tribal peoples do trade and commerce with each other. And so with this thing that Don and I have been talking about for the last little while, it's something that I have approached my customary chief, Wapaskasaniawasis, up in my original soil. I've been engaging him about this idea, as well as the tribal peoples that are in that family, and they've been talking about the challenges and circumstances and the situations that they face as tribal peoples as we speak today. And I don't know if you've listened to the federal budget that was just passed a couple of days ago by the conservative government here in Canada, SIC, and there's absolutely nothing in there that is benefiting the original peoples of this land, and it's absolutely no surprise at all. So that's an indication of the way that it's been for the last 136 years, ever since they formalized this act, this Indian Act, as they call it, and they've been keeping tribal peoples hostage under that act. However, there are tribal peoples that will not allow themselves to be under that system, and so therefore they don't benefit from the usual things that the treaty people, the ones that have agreed to go with treaty with the federal governments, they don't benefit the same way as they do, because the tribal peoples don't access the same resources, and if they do, they get pushed at the bottom of the list because of the idea that the paper chiefs need to take care of their treaty people first, followed by the tribal people. So the tribal peoples are the poorest of the poorest here in North America, and with this concept that Don and I have been talking about for the last several months, as I said, is a way to eradicate the poverty, the abject poverty that we experience as tribal peoples, and also to bring back the idea of productivity with tribal peoples. You know, there's a whole lot of misconceptions, there's a whole lot of stereotype, and Don and I were talking about racism today. In fact, we were texting back and forth about racism. and how racism is so rampant in North America as well as throughout the world. But more specifically, having experienced it here on Turtle Island, racism is alive and well, despite the fact that a lot of people already know that the tribal peoples are groveling in the dirt in their own soil. Meanwhile, all kinds of people are trampling over all their soil that they were lied to and cheated out of and taken by force in some cases. And so this idea of establishing international trade and commerce is certainly going to be a sensitive situation to stick handle and maneuver. However, it is something that's doable in this day and age because we are doing this in a way that doesn't cause any harm to other persons. We respect the idea that there are persons that are involved in international trade and commerce, and if it means that that the corporations want their cut on the transaction that's going on between the Hmong tribe as well as the Wapascasane tribe, then sure, we'll include them in that if they want a piece of the action. But it's not something that we would impose or that we would legislate or that we would force them to do or take. And these directions that we get, these teachings that we get, don't come from the men themselves. It actually comes from the grandmothers. We're a very matriarchal, matrilineal society. And we get all of our direction, all of our teachings from our grandmothers and our aunties and our sisters. That's who we go to as men when we're challenged with a variety of different situations. And we go and talk to them. We go and visit. We go and give them gifts. We take them out. We do things so that they would give us direction, give us instruction. Because at the end of the day, we know as tribal peoples that if it's not for the fire, if it's not for the women in our life, our grandmothers, our sisters, our aunties, that this whole world of mankind would not exist. So our primary teachers are always women, and so that's why that's the first place that we go, and that's the first place where my customary chief went. He went and talked to his mom, his grandmother, his sisters, his aunties, his girls, and just basically talked about the idea about international commerce and trade. Are we ready to do this? Is there something that we need to be aware of? How do we approach this? And so he was given specific ideas and instructions on how to do this. Me as a Wapascasane tribal member, that I take my direction from the customary chief, and I respect that line of system. It's not necessarily a hierarchy, as he says. Each of us within the tribal community has a function. And he said, I have a function to do within our nation here. You have a function to do within our nation here. Everybody's got a function to do within the tribe. And it doesn't mean that one person is more powerful than the other. One person is more greater than the other. It all depends on the relationship between each other, and that's the only way that we could move any idea forward, is that that we respect everybody's opinions and ideas about what's important, what to go after, and also at the same time they acknowledge the fact that we do deal with another set of laws, as I mentioned, a law of the land number 2. And law of the land number 2, there's specific requirements in there that are to be followed. And of course, if you don't follow them, the army comes in, the police comes in, all these people, the RCMP comes in to enforce those law of the land 2s. And if if you don't follow them, then they throw you in jail. And how that makes sense to me is beyond me at the moment. But I mean, it's just something that I've observed through the years of how they think that's going to correct the situation. It's just another form of money making to them from what my one of my teachers who worked in the prison systems for all of his life. He's an elder that has passed on. He actually passed on in 1997, and I don't mind saying his fiction name. His fiction name was Art Solomon, and he was a great man. He was a great teacher, and he devoted his entire life to helping the brothers and sisters that were wrongfully incarcerated, put into prison systems for many years. Naturally, there were tribal members in there that probably deserved to be put in jail, but a lot of them didn't deserve to be put in jail. So that's what he devoted most of his life in. And so he was the one that said that that particular justice system is designed for them. If you listen to the word "just us," it meant them. And so I said, okay, I understand that. And so, speaking of this idea about international commerce and trade, it's high time that we have that between tribes, and I'm very looking forward to working with the Hmong tribe, and that's our first relationship that's going to be established, and this is going to pave the way for other tribes that can join us in this international commerce and trade. And so
and that's where Michael Kravitz comes in, where he can really help move this thing forward with his position in relationship with the United Nations. According to the United Nations treaties, we need to have non-government organizations act as intermediaries between tribes. So creating the intertribal trade organization and the tribal commerce economy, we are now prepared to present to the United Nations, and we're hoping that we can talk Michael into assisting that.
Well, I know Michael Kravitz will address that particular topic in the next webinar that will occur next month, but just by happen chance, I have Michael sitting right here with me, and he does have something he'd like to share at this point in the conversation.
You there, Michael?
Yes. Actually, I've got something I want to share with y'all I think will really kind of feel good. Right now, the UN is talking about development. As a matter of fact, the big milestone coming up is 2019, which is the end of a certain period of time under the Millennium Development Goals, where they're going to be looking into the, I guess, their success or failure on that level. And I just wanted to share with you something that the United Nations Development Program put into the mix. This is their statement that they gave to the United Nations Drug Control Office about drugs as we come into the UNGAS. They said, the criminalization of indigenous traditional practices done without consultation of indigenous communities raises a number of human rights and development concerns. The ban on traditional uses of coca, opium, and cannabis was passed at a time when scant attention was given to cultural and indigenous rights and before the adoption of key international instruments and relevant jurisprudence protecting the right of all indigenous peoples to be free and prior informed consent relating to issues that affect them, and to maintain traditional, religious, and medicinal practices, and to own, develop, control, and use of the real property and resources. Criminalization of drugs used for traditional and religious purposes likewise contradicts human rights protections for the traditional and religious use of controlled drugs. So I just wanted to share that language was really, it meant a lot to me. Hopefully you'll you'll feel the same way.
I'm very glad that you are aware of that language. It is very pertinent to us all, because in a way, the cannabis community that I grew up with is tribal in nature. All of us have a sense of tribalness in relation to this work that we do with cannabis. And if children can be adopted according to the second law of the land, like in the United States or Canada, tribes can adopt us as well. So this work that we're doing, we can adopt each other into each of our tribes. Isn't that right, Guy?
Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't take a paper or a pencil to do that. All it takes is the blessings of the grandmothers, the mothers, the wives, the sisters, the aunties. That's all it takes.
Wow. So I'd like everyone to understand that this call out that we're making to you is, we would really like to see that the direction of this work that we're doing in seeking compliance with the United Nations, that we maintain this as a family. We believe that those of us that fight and work in this field, whether it's Casper or Dr. Malamede or Steve Sarich with Washington State Hemp Commission or others, that we remember that we did this and we started from this in a tribal ideal from the heart. And we don't want to lose sight of that.
Well, I also get the impression that one of your primary focuses is a seed crop or a food crop that you intend to let the plants grow to flower and then produce seeds so that you can utilize the oil that is produced from them. Is that correct?
Well, I think the thing that we need to understand first is that where Guy is right now up in northern Canada, they only have about 118 days maximum photo period. They have a very difficult time taking cannabis all the way to seed. And they also have a hard time having food stores and other food because of the shortness of their photo period.
In that tropical environment, Don, you should be able to get 3 seed crops a year, right?
Well, no, you got to target your crops according to the marketplace. In regards to seed crops, the number one thing that is going to be a challenge for people, whether here or the United States or anywhere else, is understanding that if you don't have a plan, what I call planned ruins, you're going to create a problem for yourself. Because if you, like here in Thailand, we have monsoons and tropical storms and crop failures. We got to plan the expansion of this industry according to planned ruins or crop failures. And if you have a crop failure because of disease or natural disaster, what are you going to do in replacing that seed and to start another crop? Right. We have got to have international trade of seed and a seed bank that is reliable and dependable to respond to these disasters, to stay in the running when you approach a contract like we will be doing with the United Nations.
Okay, now I know some tribes are a little stressed out about the concept of smoking medical marijuana, let alone smoking recreational marijuana. So, Don, how, from your point of view, how does medical marijuana fit into all this?
Over a decade ago, the Kingdom of Thailand recognized that the Hmong tribes and the tribes here in Thailand were the poorest of the poor economically. And what happened was that the king, King Bhumipol, exerted his position and his resources to develop a scientific theory called the New Theory. And I encourage people to look it up. It's quite fantastic when you fully understand the implications of the King Bhumipol New Theory in regards to permaculture, economy, and identity. And during the process of development of this scientific principle of the New Theory, he asked the Queen, his wife, to start a project called OTOP. And I also suggest people look that up online, OTOP. One tamboon, one product. And during the process of developing the OTOP Royal Project, the Queen created 2 institutes and to study scientifically of all the different variables available agriculturally, of all the known different food, medicines, herbs, and everything that's available to the tribes, to quantify it scientifically and economically. During that project, I had the privilege of getting involved in the Queen Circuit Hemp Project. And it was then that I realized that what I was looking at was a socio-economic permaculture revolution, that when you insert the hemp project into the King's New Theory, what you have is you have a permaculture economic design that highlights cannabis, or in particular hemp, as the economic engine. The closing argument for the theory is exports and imports. And since the tribe has United Nations recognition, what we decided to do was to develop the commercialization aspect of Thai Cannabis Corporation to be inclusive of the King's New Theory, not just the hemp side. So what happened is we took all this material and we started joining tribes together, and I started sharing this with my tribes back in the United States. And you're starting to see the impact of this. Now we've reached a critical mass where the total number of tribes globally wanting to join in on this new economic revolution in modeling King Bhumipol's New Theory in conjunction with Queen Sirikit's Hemp Project has reached a point to where it has excited the tribal peoples to the point where we are now petitioning the United Nations to receive preferential nation status for disaster relief contracts and other contracts that the United Nations has, that through UNDRIP we should be able to acquire first. And that's where Michael comes in helping us with solidify this growing relationship with all the different tribal peoples that wish to participate.
And does this also include medical cannabis?
Yes, it does. It does include medical cannabis. But medical cannabis is something that, due to the war on drugs and prohibition over the last 40 years, it has affected the continuity of 3 generations. Right. So what we need to do is we need to address this from a socioeconomic perspective, from the lowest threat. And the lowest threat for us is acknowledging hemp as a food, as an energy source, as a commodity, and a lot of different things, and approach the medical side through social programs and through awareness and through professionalism, rather than the wild, wild west or the coffee shops of Amsterdam.
It's sad and in many ways amazing how decades of misinformation nearly destroyed this plant, nearly wiped it off the face of the earth, a plant that provides for us so many creature comforts and so many needs for our spirit and our body and our souls. It's amazing that we still have it around, and because of today's information, it seems like finally people are learning again the truth about how important this plant is.
Well, you're dealing with generational prejudices here, and that's one of the difficulties that this industry is going to have. Is we got to recognize that if you're going for the gold mine of trying to be the king of medical providers, you're dealing with a very self-centered, very small, highly competitive market. But if you back up and you look at this from a perspective of having a foundation of economics, where tribes are importing and exporting and building factories to develop verticals like the power bar, the hemp-based power bar for disaster relief, or the Simlac milk or ice cream or things like this. When you look at all the different verticals that can be built, the one shared commonality problem is that there be enough feedstock for all the different verticals that can develop out of this. And when you take a look at providers, cultivators in the northern latitudes, they only have so many days of photo period. Same thing with Australia. So by working together intertribally, we can have a commodity exchange that we know that if I can't be producing seed in October, November, December, January up in Canada, then my tribe up there knows that they can access from Australia, they can access from us, and we can interdevelop each other's needs to cover those different blank spots within the cultivation cycle.
Now, I would imagine that you have a particular strain or two that you use in your climate for producing more seed. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. the thing about that is, and that's rather a contentious point right now, that during the hemp project here in Thailand, they identified indigenous Thai landrace strains. And when I say that from a tribal perspective that is irrespective of the known borders right now. Mm-hmm. So there's over 10 different varieties of landrace strain that have been identified here that are, some are considered feral or wild. And what we're looking at doing is we're looking at taking these other high-yielding varieties like down there in Australia and other varieties that have been developed through these many years but have a genetic problem of inbreeding. And we want to breed them back to the landrace strain and identify or create our own strain from the landrace strains so that these strains belong to the tribes that join with us here. You know, there's a great big hole in the genetic library for cannabis and hemp globally in the tropical region. And that's one of the things that we're working on right now is developing out that library and catching up with the Northwest as an example. So one of the things that we're looking at is how to do epigenetic work to make it so that we can do seed production down here to provide, like, for instance, the North Canadian tribes with seed variety that will work up there for them, for planting, for their photo period, as an example. We have the institutes, and we have the technology, and we have the universities, and we've got the laboratories, all of that. So the tribes that are just coming into this, they don't need to reinvent the wheel. They don't need to start new institutes or start from scratch. They just jump in with us and carry on.
Now, it seems to me that it's hard to get the United Nations to move on anything rather quickly.
Actually, I don't agree with that per se. What it is that United Nations has a standard that they have to maintain, and it's our obligation to approach that standard. And once you understand how the system works and you approach or rise up to it, then it becomes rather more amiable and more workable for us to seek their guidance. Like these different programs, the drug program and the disaster relief program and these other programs, they have economic social development projects and full funding for all these different projects. And here's something that I encourage folks to take a look at. When we do finally end prohibition, it needs to be recognized that the United Nations is going to be in with that as well. And they are already making overtures of fulfilling needs that hemp and the work that others are doing can approach and get these contracts. When we think about ending prohibition, we need to step back and look at and take ourselves personally out of the equation and look at what it's going to do in relationship to the United Nations and approach getting some of these different projects and funding from that organization.
All right, now, Don, it seems like you and Guy have an awful lot of support from the tribal community. Now, am I misconstruing that, or are there a lot of people who are fighting you on this and who are against it?
Not much, no. I mean, what's happening here in Thailand now is that they're changing some of the rules of drug interdiction here in the Southeast Asian area of doing what's necessary, of combating smuggling and mafia and illicit trafficking and things like that. And that is something that is actually needed to open up the legitimate people and the legitimate market that needs to be maintained in a dignified and honorable manner. So this approach that we are doing has been slow. It's taken me 5 years to get to this point. But it's the right way. It's what needs to be done to bring it into the fold of recognition within society. So as far as recreational use, that's not something that I deal with because that's a domestic issue. And there are other things that other people can bring to this to help educate people later. But right now, we got to quantify this and how it's going to affect society step by step.
Well, gentlemen, we are down to the last couple of minutes of the 2-hour broadcast. And Guy, I know you wanted to make some remarks pertaining to the pharmaceutical industry before we concluded this presentation, and this might be a good time for that. A lot of people are not aware that pharmaceuticals have not been part of the Indian heritage, and unless I'm mistaken, most tribal communities prefer to take care of their medical elements and problems that they face in life with natural remedies. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point there. Yes, the pharmaceuticals were certainly not a part of our tradition yet, so this is what I mean by the brainwashing and the misinformation and all this crap that happens. Sorry about my language. If I'm using wrong language here, you'll have to excuse me, because I get really riled up about all this stuff all the time. And I have people that say, calm down a little bit, will you? And so, but yes, pharmaceuticals are not part of our traditional medicines for sure. And there's no doubt about that. However, the majority of us indigenous people, Indians, have been so conditioned and brainwashed, for the last couple of 100 years about what's good for us and what's best for us. And we have so many of our indigenous people that believe all this crap that goes on. It just makes me sick, man. It's just sickening. It's sickening to my stomach to have my own people, my own relatives, my own relations believe all this crap that's being fed to them on a daily basis, and believing that these pharmaceuticals are actually doing them good. And yet, when I try to casually introduce the concept of cannabis, I'm totally shut out. I'm looked at as a demon. I'm looked at as someone that's not a part of the community or part of the tribe. I'm suddenly on the outside looking in, and like it's just twisted, man. It's just twisted. So thank you for making that point.
Yeah, perhaps I should bring in a social perspective on this. I was going around to a lot of different grand monks in each of the different provinces through Thailand, getting presenting to these grand monks and to the Grand Monk of Thailand himself about the work that the Queen was doing with the Hemp Project, and the work that we're trying to do in recognizing the medical use of cannabis as well. And when I made my presentation about, of course, there was a lot of different prohibitionist ideas and a lot of things going around. But by the time I got done explaining the efficacy of cannabis medicine, the monks would always come back and say, does it reduce human suffering? That was their only question. Does it reduce human suffering? And when the answer came back that yes, it does, that it's up to doctors and up to patients to say, yes, it cures or it doesn't cure. But when you look at it from a perspective, does it reduce human suffering? The answer is yes. So now the Buddhist clergy here and the Buddhist ideal here of Ayurvedic medicine of reducing human suffering, it's wide open. There is no resistance.
Well, I have a resistance, and it's a resistance to the clock, but no matter how hard I try to resist it, I can't fight the fact that it keeps right on ticking. So, gentlemen, I want to say thank you for being part of our broadcast. Guy, it has been really interesting. We've learned a lot having you on here. And Don Land, if someone wants to get a hold of you or become part of what you're doing or learn more about the projects you're involved with or how they can get involved to make what you're doing a reality, how would they make that happen?
Well, I would ask all your listeners to cheer us on. Join us on hempnet.org. Go to the page Cannabis Story and join us on the webinar. It's free.
Again, let me remind you one more time, we're doing this the third Sunday of each month for the next 4 months, and they are free to download, as you've heard. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to them live on the broadcast, you can always download them at the timeforhemp.com website. While you're there, make it a point to subscribe to Joint Conversations and become part of the Joint Conversation, our online magazine. Lots of comics you can enjoy and download and share with your friends as well. Editorial cartoons. We got a cartoonist that's part of our family as well. Lots of music can be found on the timeforhemp.com website and our live stream. And Monday through Friday, my show airs, and we have a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week broadcasting stream put together by a team of people who are dedicated to ending prohibition all around the world. And as we say here, Time for Hemp is like a good joint. It's always best when you share it with your friends.
Daily the system grinds on our minds, yeah. Herb reconnects us to the art of time. Lies they teach, they don't educate. Oh no, herb wise eyes see and penetrate. I'm the bush mama, I promote the marijuana. It's a medicine to men, but I must mention, feel the spiritual connection when you smoke. Focus your attention. You got a problem, herb might help you solve them. Be still in the silence. Wisdom is revealed. Good intention and right action is the highest virtue. I don't want to be hurt, I don't want to hurt you. Coming to conscious conclusions creates peaceful solutions. I'm another one of you. I feel the things you do. Follow the smoke and let your attention drift. Keep on rising till you feel your spirit lift. Breathe deep and easy, giving thanks for your life. Banish fear and darkness, step into pure light. I'm the bush mama, I promote the marijuana. It's a medicine to men, but I must mention, feel the spiritual connection when you smoke. Focus your attention. You got a problem, herb might help you solve them. Be still in the silence. Wisdom is revealed. Pass the chalice, burn away malice, enter the universal mind. From the realm where nothing's new, multiple choices come into view. Dip into the vast knowledge pool, and when you surface you feel renewed. Space is where you make wise decisions. Time is for the art of giving. Mistakes are a part of living. Remember compassion, practice forgiving. And when you speak, seek to reach a higher ground, a place where harmony can be found. Then we'll be skanking to a brand new sound. Follow the smoke and let your attention drift. Keep on rising till you feel your spirit lift. Breathe deep and easy, giving thanks for your life. Banish fear and darkness, step into pure light. I'm the bush mama, I promote the marijuana, but I must mention,
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.